Hello, welcome to Coffee with Kathleen. So excited to see you. And look, if you think Coffee with Kathleen is cool, guess what's even cooler? Meeting with me and my colleagues in person, and we will be live on the show floor at Apex and SEMA, as we are every year and have been for I don't know how many years past, but we will be there again this year, and I would love it if you found me and you said hello. That would be great. Meantime, I am really excited about this month's episode. I have perhaps, at least to me in my life, the most special guest of all time on Coffee with Kathleen, and that is my son, Rawlins.
Oh,
welcome to the studio, Rawlins.
Cheers.
Although, look, on the Coffee with Kathleen podcast, not everybody drinks coffee. What is in the cup, Rawlins?
So I'm the biggest liar, maybe. Despite being the most important guest, I am the biggest liar on Coffee with Kathleen. This is Diet Coke in medieval times gimlet. Not even really a coffee mug at this point.
Yeah, well, we've got to have enough height on the cup in order to accommodate the amount of Diet Coke that you need to power this machine.
I just appreciate you still letting me on despite not conforming to the requirements of the title of the program.
Yeah, it's fine. Other people have had tea. Okay. Or I think even like water, which what's that about? At least you have a caffeinated beverage,
Like we can drink water any other time. When you're on Coffee with Kathleen, you need that energy. You need to recharge, at least to match you.
Yes, you need to recharge. So good. Well, thank you for being here. I, of course, want to talk to you about your success in the realm of social media. So for those of you who don't know, and there's like maybe 2 people in the US who don't, Rawlins is a sensation on TikTok. And recently, many of my partners in the industry have reached out to me to say, oh, I have been watching this kid for the last few months. I had no idea you were his mom. I was in New York recently and appeared on Rawlins' TikTok feed. And so the streams are officially crossed here. But you've achieved an extraordinary amount of success on the platform in kind of a short period of time. So talk about how you did that.
It's interesting because I feel like I've been posting on TikTok and posting on social media for a very long time. I think like I'm 25 years old, so it's kind of I've grown up along with the growth of social media. TikTok as a platform is just something that's so fun because it's so short form and you can just be funny or be silly or incorporate music into videos in like a really, really easy way. So I've been posting TikTok videos for the last 2 years, and then all of a sudden I just like bared it down to like what I like doing the most, which is just like doing silly little dances to whatever audios are like popular on TikTok at the time, or sounds, I guess you could say. And those have garnered quite a bit of viewership. I would do a lot of like dancing to videos like new songs by singers, and those singers would interact with those posts, such as Katy Perry or Kesha. And then I started dancing to like audios of like people talking that like people put beats over. So this video of Gypsy Rose Blanchard talking over this trap beat is my video with the most traction, which gained over 7 million views. And it was literally like posted almost a month ago now. So that's really what my like channel has grown off of. But I also like tell stories, and people are interested in like things I have to say and tales of woe from my life.
Yeah. So, while you're joking a little bit about sort of the tales of woe, though some things are, more difficult than others, I would say that if I think about your collection of videos as a brand, that you have a consistently humorous and kind of positive approach. Yes. Which is sort of a version of you, right? Like we're all showing some version of ourselves every time we do something that's very public. It's impossible to manifest all yourselves at once, and it would be well, it'd be sheer chaos to try, right? But
Absolutely.
so how have you kind of decided like what version of yourself you're going to package for this platform?
I think the like version of myself that is this online persona is partially a version of myself, but it's also a version of myself that my audience has created for me. People say like I'm a ray of sunshine, I bring so much joy and positivity to people's day. Do I think I'm the most like joyful or positive person? Not necessarily. I think I'm a shady ass bitch. So like I get it from my mother. But I think that um you can still, that is still a part of me. I'm still very joyful. I am positive. But you can kind of play into that in a way. And I don't necessarily have to be a shady ass bitch. I can be that in my life with my friends. But it's kind of, yeah, it's both a reaction to how other people see me and what is true to me on the inside. But also at the same time, you don't want to show every single side of yourself, because putting yourself on social media is asking for people to just judge you on a public platform. So
Mhm.
you don't want every single side of yourself to be on there, because people are going to critique you.
Yeah.
And there are people who thrive off of getting critiqued, and like they call that like rage baiting, where they like do things intentionally wrong or intentionally act like a clown on the internet to be judged by other people. But I never wanted that to necessarily be my narrative, because even though bad press is good press, I don't think I don't know, that's not good for the mental health, especially when like social media is so like personality facing.
Yeah, and I think that would be tough for anybody who's watching this who's kind of in the professional space as well. I don't think controversy baiting or rage baiting is necessarily going to reflect positively on whatever brand or business they're trying to promote.
Yeah.
So, kind of given that, when people do attempt to engage with you in that way, what are because, if you put yourself out there and you happen to go viral, you're going to get all different kinds of responses.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look at us. But absolutely. I mean, people are going to say things about you, and it's up to you how you want to respond to that. So there are some hate comments where I'm like, okay, that's a little bit too far. I don't want to engage with that. And I can kind of like just block that person. And that's honestly best for me at that time. There are some people where I'm like, okay, this person is being a little bit of a dumbass, and I can kind of interact with them and do that. But that's like my brand. I don't think someone representing a company should ever interact with any kind of negativity online, because at the end of the day, like, it's so easy for words, especially like typed words in comment sections on the internet, to be misinterpreted. And we have to understand that like a majority of the audiences on social media are very, very young, most of the time under 18 years old. So these people don't have the same like levels of reading comprehension or understanding of like sarcasm, wit, dry humor, as like we're not all on the same level.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, a few things. So certainly delete and block if it's wild or, out of pocket. Sometimes what people will experience, or what I've experienced as a brand, is like people are they're not necessarily being trolls, but they're vehemently disagreeing, I would say, with whatever the point is that was made. And, and they might throw in a few words saying, you don't know what you're talking about at all. You're so dumb, blah, blah, blah. This is what I think, etc. And sometimes I do find it okay to tangle with some of that. And I think the important part is to stay true to whatever your brand is in that interaction. If you go too corporate and you're like, thank you for your concern, I'm happy to message you privately, blah, blah, blah. I think those comments are the worst, because all you're doing is creating doubt in someone's mind as to how you really stand up to challenge, because you're just saying like, I'll message you privately. And so many brands do this. So I try to do what I'm going to do out in the open so everybody can see how I'm responding. I might do it with a little bit of, sass in some cases, especially depending on how their comment came off.
Yeah.
Or, I might just say, hey, I don't think you understand at all, sort of like the message that we're trying to promote here, like all love, like all love for what we're talking about or for the industry or for the thing or whatever. Or sometimes people misunderstand what you're trying to say and you actually might agree with their core point. And it's like, hey, we're not so far apart, right?
Yeah.
Like this is exactly what I intended to communicate. And so, yeah, like I said, or like you said, I think the important thing is to really watch out too, as you're like a person that's engaging. It's not just the brand or the company or the thing, right? And so you have to be attentive to how it makes you feel, especially, obviously you're posting several times a day, which is TikTok is a platform made for that, versus some of the other platforms where posting that many times a day would be kind of obnoxious. So I have found in my, when I'm engaging in a foray on like a new platform, I found there's a certain amount of nerves that come with that, and particularly video. Like,
Yeah.
words are kind of my thing, but like the first time when I was doing this podcast, I always thought I wanted to do a podcast. I like to say, like, you could throw me in front of anybody and I could talk about anything. I don't even, I don't necessarily need to rehearse as much as the normal person or whatever. But all of a sudden you put like a camera on, and there's some kind of a thing that happens, right? And there's sort of the nerves. And so you've also come out on TikTok or other platforms with some things that are political or might be viewed as controversial. And so are you nervous before you record those? How do you sort of handle that, stay true to yourself, while doing what you think is necessary in order to make the world you want to live in, right?
Of
So how do
course.
you manage that?
I think it ultimately, at the end of the day, posting something that's political is just inherently in my nature. Like, I think we live in a world, and I think a lot of, especially, I don't know, I think a lot of companies and brands are probably facing this issue as well. It's like, what are your values? And if like my values are as a person, like, okay, I'm a queer person, like sharing my like queerness on the internet. So ultimately, like, you have to take a stand, especially currently. I think not taking a stand in political issues has actually made a lot of general audiences turn on a lot of social media creators, as I've seen, especially with the upcoming election. There are just people needing to hear your opinion on it. So I think not sharing your opinion is actually worse, and people are going to start questioning it. And uh, I think not being political is not just like not in my nature, as I said. Like, I think these sounds are popular for a reason, and Kamala Harris especially is like drawing in this meme attention. So like, even if like it wasn't like in my nature, it's as a branding thing, like this is obviously popular. So you have to
Right.
go off of that, and like on top of it, like being something I support, absolutely. So there's no nerves in that, because I also feel like I have the political wherewithal to combat anyone who might come against my thoughts, you know? And as you said, it's about when and where to engage with those people who will disagree. So you have to go into it kind of knowing that people are not going to agree with your opinion, because politics are so two-sided a majority of the time. So you have to expect that in a way.
Yeah. And honestly, almost anything you post, people can disagree with. And almost anything these days can be politicized because in some cases, our very existence is an act of politics, and possibly of liberation. But yeah, I learned that lesson actually over the last few years because there were things happening in the world. And I don't want to virtue signal. So I'm a little hesitant about that. I don't want to talk about something just so I seem like a good person. I want to talk about something because it actually has value for me to talk about it. And so I struggle with that a little bit. And, people were asking me when, some of the abortion rulings came out and women were losing some of their rights, or, recently with the assassination attempt on the former president, people were, sort of saying like, what is Kathleen going to have to say about this? Nothing I say changes the reality of what happened or what we're dealing with day to day. But what I learned is that my community needs to hear from me sort of how I'm processing, how I'm taking this in, and how I can hold them. in times of uncertainty. So that's the approach that I've tried to take. There might still be an aspect of that seems particularly Pollyanna-ish or virtuous, if you will, or something like that. And I still have to be careful because the last thing I want to do is alienate anyone. That's both on a personal and a business level, is I don't really want to alienate people. I have space for all sorts of people, regardless of whether we agree or not. And I think we need to get back to a place where we can more politely discourse about all kinds of things and like understand that there is no one reality. And we're all living our own version of reality, and that multiple truths that seem oppositional are possible to exist authentically in the same space at the same time. So my lived experience being different than yours means my truth is different than yours. And I think we've totally forgotten that we just want everybody to sort of buy into where we are. And we're willing to, go absolutely nuts when they don't. And that's unfortunate. So as far as this goes, what would you suggest to people who are thinking about, look, I'm of a particular age, as we know, just turned 49. And so I'm still on Facebook. And like all of us Gen Xers are, I'm with the Gen Xers and the boomers on Facebook still. Also on Instagram, like obviously I only joined TikTok because you were posting videos and I wanted to see them.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to see like the relevancy of the platform and the different kinds of content that people can share there. Because honestly, if it's just the latest dance trend or something like that, I honestly don't care as much about that. But I see people starting to really diversify the content that's there. What advice would you give someone who's just thinking about, expanding their brand into more digital spaces and how to do that?
I think when you enter the world of social media, you need to find an interest in social media itself. I think I truly became successful on social media when I was able to work, because I transferred to a work from home job where I was able to doom scroll on TikTok for hours a day. And I was able to consume so much content on social media that I was able to see things gain traction and what gained traction and what interested me, because the algorithm eventually finds the things you like, and the things you like are ultimately going to be the things you'll want to create and the trends you'll want to follow. And that's how I was able to, I think, garner my early successes on TikTok, is that I was able to hop on things super early that interested me and that I wanted to get in on. So it's about being chronically online. If you want to get into social media, be interested in social media. Don't just do it because you're like, well, people do social media, so we have to do social media. There are obviously other ways to market yourself, and there are other ways to be successful. Social media is just another tool to do that, but if it's not for you, it's not for you, and people are going to be able to see that. Authenticity is huge, which is why being political is so major, is because you need to be true to yourself. And that's so much feedback I've gotten on my pages, people going, we love an authentic, true person on the internet. I'm like, well, sure, I'm being a version of myself. It's not 100% authentic, but people can see through fakeness very quickly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Here's something that I learned from you that I thought was really particularly interesting and that I struggle with in my career in general, which is the idea of repetition. So for me, every time I think about doing something, I think about creating a unique piece of content, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I do share that same content in different forms across multiple platforms once, right?
Yes.
I'll do a version for Insta, a version for Facebook, a version for TikTok, version for LinkedIn. There may be slightly different, but same content. And then I'm like, done. I talked about that thing.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm done. And then I'm trying to think of what's the next thing I'm going to do in a few days. But you will do maybe in a different outfit or with a different background or a slightly different whatever, but you're going to do the same dance, the same song, the same whatever, similar rant, whatever, multiple times.
Yeah.
And maybe even multiple times in a day, or definitely multiple times in a week. So talk about that repetition and that idea, because I think that does take some of the sting out of it because you're not having to generate as much unique content as you might think.
Yeah, I mean, it's because not everyone is going to see it the first time. It's the platform is so large that like audiences are going to want to see, like different audiences are going to see it every single time you do it, but there are also people who want to see it over and over and over again because the content is such small bites that it's like wanting more, 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 more. Even if it's the same thing, it's very much like these people are chronically online. They're used to these kinds of short form videos. That's what they crave. And yes, I think like my fashion is a part of it because it shows off like a different outfit every single day, even though it's the same song or the same dance, but there is like something slightly different that like surprises people every single time. Like I just did one yesterday where now I'm like twirling my Swiffer around my body while doing the dance as well. So just like upping the ante every single time, and the
We
audience.
love a queen with a homemade baton.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, I think it's about like there are so many creators out there who I do think like thrive off of doing the same thing every single time. Now, I will say I'm someone who gets very, very bored easily. So like I do need to find my own ways to switch it up also. And I do post so much that I post so many different things that doing the same thing every single time doesn't feel that repetitive. And also getting that large of an audience from the one thing you're known for will get people to see all your other content as well.
Yeah, I'm really starting to think about this just in general because I have generated so much content over the years. There's presentations that I've written. Like a few years back, I wrote a presentation I feel particularly proud of called Women Who Win.
Mm-hmm.
I have delivered that presentation in its entirety once. I mean, I did it for an internal audience at the company just as kind of a dry run. But then, in public, I've done it once. That presentation freaking rocks.
I'm
So
sure.
I think I need to, it integrates so many women across the industry and their point of view. It's not just me yammering on about the things that I think. And I feel like it deserves to live, to rise again. So I'm thinking about how to repackage it, maybe update it a little bit or whatever, but deliver it in slightly different ways and continue to use it because, I worked really hard on it for one thing. But for another thing, it's just one of the things that I've done that I'm the proudest of. And I feel like you get into this bubble where I'm worried that if I say similar thing one day over the next day, that people are going to be like, oh Lord, like here she comes again talking about this, right? Like last year, I did the 24, or I did, 2023 miles in 2023. And this year I'm doing 2024 miles in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And so this platform that I'm on that monitors how many miles you've gone and all of that, it gives you these little virtual bibs that you can post for each 100 miles. So last year I was like every 100 miles, I was posting those things. This year I started off the year by saying I'm doing the challenge again, but I'm only going to post every few hundred miles because I don't want to bug y'all or whatever. And some people were like, what are you talking about? Like nobody ever said to me they were bothered by it or annoyed by it, or I didn't lose followers because I was doing that or whatever. And in fact, this year, the platform doesn't just give you the every 100 miles. Now they've got these weird number of miles. They'll be like, oh, you've gone 1,967 miles. Did you know that's the number of feet that blah, blah, blah mountain, whatever. I don't know.
Whoa.
It's weird things. And they've got these little bibs at strange mile markers with little facts or whatever that you can also post. And some people are regular about posting those, and they're every say 30 to 50 miles or whatever that you do. And so it's interesting, but they created more frequency rather than less. And so, I just think that's an interesting concept for people to play with.
Have you heard about the TikTok series, Who the F Did I Marry?
No.
Okay, so it's this woman named Risa Tisa, and she told this story, and who wronged her. If anyone's interested, just go look it up. But it was over 50 parts long, this story. I think about like 14 hours. And people were like invested, just scrolling through TikTok, watching this woman's videos, and she gained so much traction from doing that. So like these creators thrive off of splitting like stories into like multi-part things, because that also gains more revenue for them on the platform. You know, if things are multi-part, you know, stay tuned for the next episode, see what we're going to do, come back for the big reveal, things like that always will gain more traction often.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Although there was somebody I was following, and then she said, "Oh, I'm going to talk about this," and I was like, "Oh, I'm kind of interested to see how this turned out." A reality TV star who, like, I wanted to know how the relationship ended up. She teased it out, and then she teased it out in another video, and then she was like, "Next week I'll probably," and I was like, "Okay, girl, I'm done. I'm over it now. I don't care." So I think you have to be careful. I think you have to deliver value in each thing that you do, whether that value is entertainment or whatever it is. But there has to be something. It can't just be you pretending like you're going to do something and then not doing it, because I give those throats a virtual choke.
You have to know it's actually engaging and not part of that like rage baity stuff that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, you don't want to bait people and then not deliver the goods, right? Exactly. So you want to entice people and then meet some level of their expectation and then interest them in the next thing, right?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so what other advice do you have for people?
What other advice do I have for people? I think like don't be afraid to be stupid is like really huge, and don't be afraid to be simple. I think when I like really simplified my content is when it became successful. I like would try to get the best lighting and the best sound quality and the best camera quality, and like would make sure I looked perfect. And it was like, no, when I was like in like sweats and like a Diet Coke sweatshirt is when like Katy Perry loves my fucking video. Like it really, you don't have to overcomplicate it for it to be successful. And I think that's also a part of that like authenticity side of it, is like people want to see all sides of you. So like if you say a word, if you misspeak, if you do multiple takes, if you're laughing, like it's okay. You can look like a little bit of an idiot. People don't mind.
Well, we know your laugh is legendary, Rawlins.
Oh yeah. Well, what can I say?
Nothing. It makes me very happy. And nobody can really listen to you laugh. I have videos just of this kid laughing. If you're having a bad day, like just text me or message me. I will send you a video of him laughing, and you will not be able to resist.
It's perfect.
It's perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, for sharing a cup of some caffeinated
cup of Joe.
Yes. And yeah, thank you. This has been great.
I love you, Mom.
I love you.
Oh.